guys, this is how you do a valve job on a 2018 to 20 CSC SG250. This would also be the same for a CSC TT250 because they use the same motor. First thing you want to do, take your spark plug out. So we took it out already. You unplug the boot from the spark plug, then you take a socket, ratchet, take your spark plug out of there. That's the first step. Next thing you're going to do is take a 10mm wrench and remove these bolts. There's one here, and then one more on the other side. This top cover here, that is your valve cover. So you take a 10mm wrench and you'll start removing those like so. Once you get all those 3 bolts removed, you can remove your valve cover. In the owner's manual, it says you have to remove the tank to remove the valve cover. You might have to on a TT250. On an SG250, you don't have to go through all that to remove the tank to remove the valve cover. You can just pop it out. With a little work, you can get it out there. All right. Now, once you get the cover off, these are your valves. That's what we'll be adjusting shortly here. All right. So next, what you're going to do is you're going to remove these 3 bolts with the Phillips head. Be careful because you can strip them easily. So don't over tighten them. You want them tight, but don't over tighten them when you put it back on, but also you don't want to strip those. It'd be hell getting that out of there. And then you want to remove this with a flat screwdriver. That's your viewing port, so we'll see that shortly here. All right, so we got this off and this little viewing port off. Now when you get this cap off, a little bit of oil will run out of there. That's okay, that's normal. What you're gonna do, you take a 14mm socket. You're gonna put it in here. And you're gonna turn it counterclockwise until you see this valve come up and down. And then after this one goes up and down, that's your exhaust valve. Then you'll see this one, your intake valve, go up and down. And when it's on its way down, you'll look in this viewing window and you'll see an F and then a T. And once you see the F comes first and the T, once you see the T, there's a line by the T. You want to match that line up with this little slit in the viewing window, then you can begin to adjust your valves. So it'll look, you can see here, I know it's dark, but it'll look something like this. Hang on. See that it went down. Now you start looking in here for your F and T. All right, so one thing I need to correct is when I said that wrong. When this valve, your intake valve, goes down and then it's on its way back up, then you start looking in the viewing window for the F and the T. All right, so I don't know if you can see this, but there's your T mark and there's your line. We got that line lined up with that slot in the viewing port. Now we're gonna check the gap in between the valves with a feeler gauge. This is a feeler gauge. All these pieces of metal are different thicknesses. You're going to run them between the valves. The owner manual says to do it between 0.04 millimeters to 0.07 millimeters. So anything greater than 7 should not fit in between the valve gap. So now we're going to move to the other side of the bike to adjust the valve gap. All right, so we're on this side of the motorcycle. Again, this is the side that we want to adjust the valves from. You're going to slide your feeler gauge in between the valves. So for example here, man, that's tough to see. I'll do my best. There we go. Take your feeler gauge, okay? Slide it through this valve gap. Basically, you want to make sure the valves aren't too tight. Too tight is bad. You want to make sure a 0.07 or less can fit through. If it can't, you need to loosen it up so it can. You don't want it to be much greater than 0.07. Now what you'll do to adjust the valve gap is you take a 10 millimeter wrench, you loosen this nut, and then you turn this with a pair of needle nose to make the gap bigger or smaller. Okay, thanks. All right, so once you get your valves adjusted, you just put everything back together in reverse of how you took it apart. When you do your first valve adjustment, 9 times out of 10, the valves on these bikes are set way too tight. You can't get any sort of feeler gauge through there, so the sooner you can adjust your valves, the better. They don't want to come out of the factory adjusted by any means. They tighten them down as far as they'll go, so heads up on that. But other than that, that's it. Thanks for watching.